Guys, we finally got it. The first staff mythic slash legendary. I'd really like to see a legendary staff user as well, but this is pretty cool because I do like staff characters, support characters, so I got quite a bit to talk about in this one. Let's do it.
Let the lesson begin.
Alright guys, what's up? Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. I know it's been a little bit of time, but I've been busy, so, well, I guess it's time to talk about stuff. So before we jump into the Mythic Legendary banner, my thoughts on it, I've like read and seen what you guys have said about like the should you pull videos, and despite some statistics on it, there definitely was a good solid amount of thumbs up that tells me, plus the comments, a lot of support for me to continue doing that. And I think one of the biggest factors there was obviously the should you pull video should come before the banner releases. Unfortunately, just due to how real life is and the 1 day time span that I usually have to produce that sort of video, it ends up being pretty hard to make that video in time, especially when I'm doing a reaction impressions video as well. So what I'm gonna do is, unfortunately, I have to cut out the whole poll aspect of the should you pull video. If you guys have a suggestion on how to improve that, because there's only literally 1 day, and how I could combine that aspect, 1 day isn't enough time to compile and give everyone the time to vote and get good data. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to strictly do a should you pull analysis video on most banners without that data until I find a suitable solution on it. Obviously, when like we have a couple days between the banner and the release date and whatnot, then it's easy to incorporate that. But in this case, I'm gonna actually release a should you pull video without the polls and the community thoughts. I do appreciate that feedback, but I do feel like releasing that should you pull video before the banner is actually out should help a lot of more people, and it should gain more traction. So as always, that's what I'm gonna do. Couple hours after this video comes out, this is the reaction impressions video, I should be releasing a analysis thoughts on Elimine in more detail, plus of course the should you pull aspect of it combined with the banner itself. So yeah, thank you guys as always. You do make this channel stand out, and as always, if you like the content, well, that's how you show me. Seriously, it's just a thumbs up button. But the data I use is the data that I can make these videos with. So yeah, folks, alright, today's video is obviously just my quick initial impressions and reaction to the trailer. That's what this is. And yeah, we're going to look at it and give you my initial thoughts on this. Then I'll do an analysis video with builds and such, and where I think she stands in many modes of Heroes. Let's do this thing. Alright, so, this second... I believe this is the second one, but Bramimon is like one of them, right? Correct me in comments, I'm pretty sure it is. And we still don't have Athos, which is kind of weird as well. But anyways, Astra Speed Mythic, as you can see here, so sharing with Plumeria. What is really interesting is we now have 4, like, second Astra Mythics, 2.0 Astra Mythics. So this would be Regan, Thor, Ashera, and now Elimine. So that's crazy because we still are only at like 1 Dark Mythic, which is the not, and I feel like they're just sitting on the fence with that one, because like Syros was the first 2.0 Defense Mythic, and she was good because she enabled that 7 slot, and then I feel like Oder was like a flop because he wasn't as good, or didn't really like strictly make that didn't do too much of an impact over Syros. And with Not, she's so good on defense as a 7 slot Pathfinder enabler. It's like, what exactly could you do to compete with that? Now, the problem, in my opinion, with offense mythics is by now, most people, unless you're literally a new player, should have merged Astra and light mythics at this point, whereas these like offense mythics just kind of fill a role of like one-offs. If you're a new player, you pretty much can start new projects on this and start merging them up, but the problem is this would probably just act as a good one-off to fill that 6th slot in some of your team comps to provide some sort of support or utility. And as you see when we'll get into this, she definitely does fulfill that role. But as like a merge project, there's probably not, you probably already are merging someone else at this point, like Naga, Altina, Regan, Ashera, Thor. There's so many more, Plumeria obviously, so many more mythics in Astra Season especially, that you probably already are merging up. Obviously this doesn't apply to everyone. Those that are getting into AR, now, or our new players will definitely benefit from merging one of these new ones. And I think this banner she also shares with Ashera, so there's definitely some Astra value to be had in this banner, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Either way, colorless staff flyer, that's awesome because I am a big staff fan myself, or just healers in general. You watch me play like Sacred Stones, you see I pretty much use every single healer in the game. So I'm using like La Rochelle and Natasha and Molder the Boulder. So anyways, let's talk about this. So this is, you actually probably don't even see Holy Ground here, but that's basically just Flame's effect. It's a 30% damage reduction and Distant Guard on it, and Close Guard actually. It's defense res. So it's a bit cut off here on my layout, but effectively it's just a built-in better flame staff. She comes with Trace, Far Trace, which is okay, Attack Res Push, which is whatever, Nudge, which I think is pretty good. So this is like the shove heal. I think that's actually solid, especially if she's going to act as a support. But the big thing to talk about here is her weapon. Now note, foe cannot counterattack means that it is dazzling built in, and B, her B skill doesn't come with Raffle. This means that she's going to not be hitting that hard, but realistically she's not going to, like, she shouldn't be doing that. She's not really an offensive combat mythic, as we'll soon find out. She's definitely more supportive. And if you wanted a more of like nuker type offense mythic in Astra, it's going to be Regan or Ashera for sure. And like Thor doesn't really slack in this aspect either. Anyways, Dazzling Staff built in. At the start of turn, she grants defense res 6 to all allies within 2 spaces for 1 turn. So she pretty much just gives like defense res tactic with no conditions. As long as you're within her range, that's great. Saves you from having to run other stuff like defense res link or tactics or whatnot, so that's always nice. And then she comes with a new thing called False Start. Now that this one is gonna be interesting to talk about. Okay, let's keep it simple. So False Start has a cardinal direction condition. Think of that the same as like Loki or Mila, whereas if they're in the same column as a or row, column or row, basically the cardinal directions. If they're in the same column or row of Elimine, she's going to inflict false start on those opponents with a res check. So in contrast to Mila, which was a defense check, the way to overcome this is obviously res stacking. But here's where things get interesting. So false start, the effect is pretty much turning off start of turn effects. That is a whole abundance of different things in this game, and I mean crazy amounts of stuff in this game has a start of turn effect. This can affect stuff like infantry pulse, times pulse, Bridalcatria's triangle attack, orders effects, literally all orders effects, Legendary Sigurd's movement, Yuri's movement. Okay, I mean, like, at this point, there's just so many that you can pretty much list them out, and it's going to affect quite a lot of stuff. Now, most notably is the impact on such defense archetypes that rely on those start of turn effects. So, as I already said, stuff like Infantry Pulse and Bridalcatria being disabled by Staff of Saint is pretty huge. Keep in mind, though, that it doesn't disable odd recovery unless the unit is hitting the odd recovery unit. So if Elimine has to actually hit odd recovery, this does mean that there is definitely some counterplay involved against false start. So you could effectively res stack your healer, and I mean you have to do it a lot, as we'll see the base stats in a moment. You have to res stack your healer quite a bit to avoid getting hit by false start, and then also run them with like an odd recovery skill, which would then hit the other units. So like Elimine wouldn't be able to hit the healer who's running the recovery skill, and wouldn't be able to hit something like Bridalcatria because auto recovery would remove this debuff. So yeah, it's pretty crazy in like what it can do, but there is definitely some counterplay. Another thing to consider is there's likely only one Elimine you're gonna find when people use her. Like, I don't see people coming around with like 2-3 Elimines into a team and then just false start your whole team. It could happen, but it's not efficient when it comes to merging mythics and using them in general, so that's going to be fairly rare if you ask me. What is interesting here is there's some counterplay involving res stacking, same as Mila, and also just having your units in different columns. So don't like put your Dancer and Bridal Catria on one column. You just want them in different places and having some sort of choice between where false start hits. But it's definitely very powerful, especially when you consider some teams heavily rely on stuff like Bridal Catria with save skills and trying to nuke tanks. That's a really good counterplay involved in it, and she doesn't really need to be merged up because again, you just put her in like the 6th slot as a support unit. In fact, if you were already using Flame in like one of your slots, then she's just naturally going to fit into that slot anyways. So this is a very, very impactful support unit and has a lot of staying power. Now, there is additional text here involving summoner duels, and what that basically means is that in summoner duels, the start of turn effects, when they're both at the start, don't really do anything. They're just going to trigger just on that first turn, and then after that, false start has like that precedent, like it's the more important one. So yeah, it's definitely a very powerful effect, and it's kind of like an anti just do anything kind of it is. I'd say this is just as impactful as Isolation was on release. It's very strong and it counters a lot of things. So I'm gonna reserve a little bit more analysis on this when I do my should you pull analysis video on the banner in a couple hours after this video, but I'd say it's very powerful, and if you probably have Fed Pass, then again, just having a one-off should make quite a difference in your AR offense performance. If you're not already struggling though, like, then you don't necessarily need her, is what I would say for most people. If you feel like you are struggling to play AR offense and you need a little bit of that boost to compete, then yes, Elimine will be really good. Or if you're looking to get into AR or you're a new player and want a new merge project, then Colorless is going to be really powerful on this banner. Either way, those that end up using her should get a lot of mileage out of her. Also, that weapon effect looks very similar to the same weapon that I believe Guinevere had, which is Aurelia, I think. So as you see here, we do see your stat spread, and this is what I will be using in my analysis video later, but a base effect, like base res of 41 is kind of huge. It's going to be really difficult for most characters to dodge that res stat. Thankfully, a Phantom Res Seal exists, and I would say most players who both use Elimine and defense units who want to counter her, such as healers, will likely want to use Phantom Res Seal as well to compete in this sort of stat check war. Thankfully, there's a pretty solid F2P healer who has a high base res, and of course I'm talking about Forest. So Forest with auto recovery stonks up. The issue with odd recovery though is of course it's only on the odd turn, so that means that safety fence will still be really strong. A defense team that uses stuff like Duma, Odd Recovery, and Bridal Catria, in my opinion, will still be really strong if you combine all these effects and Catapult to try to like overcome Safe Defense, Odd Recovery, and you know, just Elimine in general. It's about as consistent as it's going to get now on defense, and I guess it's kind of unfortunate because it's like another buff to offense and making offense easier, and defense in general becomes harder to play when you have to consider all these different aspects. Stuff like Windsweep and Selena in general got completely crushed because of like the existence of Ascended Fjorm basically allowing save balls who previously were weak to Flash or Windsweep to be overcome now because Fjorm's like, nope, I don't care about your Windsweep. So this like back and forth it's hard for defense design to overcome them. Unfortunately, Bridal Catria was like one answer to beating save balls by just pressuring them really hard with heavy nukes. Unfortunately, now with Elimine existing, you have to really struggle to now beat these archetypes. Either way, it does make stuff easier for offense, and those of you with Fed Pass and Spark can definitely pick up a one-off where she will be an impact. I don't necessarily think it's worth the orbs though, unless you are looking to invest into your offense and you're struggling in some manner, adding her as a new merge project, or potentially picking her up now for summoner duels, where again she could again be very impactful. So this banner, I'm going to talk about it in the should you pull an analysis video, but I definitely would say that Colorless is very strong here, as a Shara and Elimine sharing with Claude is really good. The other colors in general, though, are not going to be as strong. I would say maybe in blue with Julia and Peony with Happy are pretty okay, and then green with Ascended Fjorm, Eitri, and Odor are also pretty okay. Doesn't look like red is very good here, as it has both Constance and Volk, kind of not giving you much account progression, and Self himself is a pretty weak-ish legendary. So yeah, that's it from me, folks. As I said, I wanted to listen to your feedback in the future videos, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to release the Should You poll and analysis video on Elimine before the banner is out, so ideally a few hours after this video, and then going forward, if I get the chance to get that voting poll aspect back into the videos, I will definitely incorporate it should there be enough time to produce that video when time permits. So yeah, guys, thank you for watching as always, and smash that like button, sub if you haven't already. If you enjoy the content I do and you really want to show your support, then the Patreon description is the best way to do it. Check out my Twitch stream where I'm doing tons of AR, Colosseum, and now Summoner Duels gameplay, along with other stuff like Sacred Stones playthrough, and so forth. Thank you all, love you all, and see you in the next one. Peace.
It's over.